Hello, my name's Stuart Chignall, and this is the second part of a series that we're doing on building a timber-framed apple press using a bunch of traditional tools and techniques. Now, the way I've been doing each part is in a long version and a short version, so that if people just want a bit of entertainment, they can just gloss through the short one and just get a bit of an idea of what we're doing, whereas if people are really interested and want to know a bit more in depth, then they can take some time with the long version. So in the short version, which you might have seen, we just sort of showed off some of the tools we're using, whereas in this one, we're actually going to sort of give a brief introduction to each tool, talk a little bit about where it's from and what it's used for. And for the first time, I'm going to use cameras. The phone I'm also using for sound, which sometimes works well and sometimes doesn't. But, so I'm going to, this is an experiment, I hope this works. We'll be switching between the two cameras as I put the video together. So the first tools that we need to use are the tools that help us deal with the tree. Now, these logs, I didn't fill them with the axe and the saw. They were felled with a chainsaw. And I also must admit that I've never used this tool here. This is this is a German ex-army crosscut saw. And I've got a bunch of friends who are interested in this sort of stuff, but we've never had them and me and a tree in the same place at the same time to use the saw. So yeah, I'm hoping at some time through this process I'm going to get someone here that we can get that saw working and get it and get some cutting done with it. These have been hewn. You can see there the different axe marks. My hewing skills have improved a lot since I did these ones, but that's another story. So anyway, this felling axe might look a bit unusual. You might not be used to seeing an axe of this shape. This is a French axe, and it's not a medieval axe, but it's a medieval pattern. So I don't think it's that old, but it is very old. But it's hard to tell with these axes just how old they are. Now, if I turn it over, you'll see there's no real identifying features. There is a brand here which tells me that it's not incredibly old. But this axe is blacksmith made. It's not an industrially forged axe. And if we look down here, see those little lines there? They're the signs of a forge weld. So that center piece of steel is tool steel, and then you've got a milder, softer steel which is wrapped around it, and then forge weld to it. So this was made by hand by a blacksmith. So it could be 40 years old. Really, it could have been just made by hand just not that long ago, or given the nature of the brand on the other side, it's probably less than 200, but it could easily be over 150 years old. That's my lovely assistant, my lovely daughter there. She's very good at helping, but she's not very good at keeping quiet. Right, so now this axe you can use to fall the tree. But like I said, I used the chainsaw to get the trees down, but this axe I used to rough the logs out. And you won't see that in this project, but if you look on the YouTube channel, there's other videos where I'm using these axes to hew the logs to shape. This is the axe that you start with. This is where you begin. But before you do even that, you're using this tool here, which is called a barking spud. Now on YouTube, you'll see a lot of videos where people use a draw knife to take the bark off a log before they hew it. There's nothing really wrong with that. I just never do it. Bark's full of grit and stones and muck, which isn't very nice on edge tools. Which is why I would use this, the barking spud. Now normally it's got a 5 or 6 foot handle in it. You literally just push it along the log to take the bark off. Now, Morag is gesticulating at me for some reason. What's the problem?
You need to smile.
Oh, I need to smile. Oh, right. Okay. Right, I need to smile. All right. This is my excited, happy face. Okay. Now, here is another style of axe, another pattern of axe, which is, again, is very old. You see this style in manuscripts going back well before the 1500s. This one is from Eastern Europe, where this pattern is still made and still used. Again, don't know how old this axe is. It's relatively modern, or it's been repaired, because this is more, I think, electrical welding. So it was either repaired with an electrical welder or possibly even made with an electrical welder. I'm not really fussed. This is one of my favourite axes. It works brilliantly, and superficially, just from a distance, it looks perfectly authentic. But it's a great tool to use. It's great to start working on the log after you've used the felling axe. Next to it is a French carpenter's axe. Now this style is again very, very old. You see axes like this in manuscripts back to the I think the 1200s, or possibly even the 1100s. And again, no idea how old it is. It's been handmade. You can see signs of the forge welding. It could have been made, post Second World War, pre Second World War in a farm blacksmith shop, or it's likely based on the feel of it more than anything else from axes that we can accurately date, that it's actually a lot older. This could be quite a very old axe. Could well over be 200 years old. But again, trying to identify these styles of axes when the pattern remains unchanged throughout the centuries, when there's no other distinguishing features, is very, very difficult. But I'm not too fast. It's a beautiful axe to use, and that's all I really care about. Now this tool, if you've been watching some of the other videos, is a log pick. You might have seen this in the previous video. It's a tool for moving wood. Essentially, it basically allows you to attach a handle to a log or a piece of wood. I've got a bit of a dodgy back, and I wouldn't be able to do a firewood with that for this, because literally I just, with the log pick, I pick it up and then just whack it in a piece of firewood and pick it up, and then I can flick it and throw it. It's a marvelous, marvelous tool, and with one in each hand, I can really work effectively without having to bend over. A tool that I've got here just to show off because it's cool is the Austrian finishing axe. We're not going to be dressing the timbers with axes to the degree that this axe warrants, but it's a beautiful axe, and I really did want to show it off. It's a very old style, but I think this is a modern reproduction. And by modern, I'm talking 1900s, so possibly 1920s, 1930s, maybe 1950s, but hard to tell with reproductions because, well, they're reproductions of old axes, but I think it's a relatively modern one. Next, we have two builder squares. Now, the fact that there's two of them is important, because there's a whole series of techniques that we need to do where we need the two squares at once, and we're probably going to be doing a video just on the use of two squares. So, stay tuned for that. It will be coming up in the next week or two. What's next? This thing down here is a clamp, or a holdfast. Now, if you see that there on the shot, maybe it's easier to show it in there. Is that more, is that good? Okay. Now, again, I'll show how these work, but this essentially is used to help me hold the timbers in place while I work on them. They're so simple, they're so quick to set. Brilliant tool. I don't know why they went out of fashion, because they're just, for woodworking with hand tools, they're just brilliant. And we'll be using this is probably one of my larger ones. We've got a whole series of these we'll be using. Now we're getting into the joinery tools, although the carpenter's axe is a joinery tool. First is a saw. This is a Japanese crosscut saw. I've never got around to putting a handle on it. I really probably should do that for this project. Really great fast cutting saw. Some people, for this sort of large timber work, because the timbers are so large, like we're talking, that's a 225, 250 mil square timber there, and it's fatter at this end. We'll use a really large circular saw or a chainsaw, because they say it's quicker to do the cuts. Personally, I find that the speed of the cut is then more than made up for by all the fiddling and faddling you have to do to fix the cut once you've made it with a chainsaw or something. Whereas with a good handsaw, it doesn't take that long. These things cut really quickly, and they're accurate, very accurate. So there's two. There's a folding Japanese saw, and I'm hoping I've got another saw coming in the mail soon, which will be really cool to use, and I'm really excited to get that because it's an awesome saw. Next is my German carpenter's hatchet. Another beautiful tool. This is a single bevel hatchet. As you see there, it's basically like a chisel with a handle at the crank on the other side. You have a very, very flat, polished back, like a chisel, polished on the back, and the single bevel. Whereas a lot of these other tools that we're going to be using, they're double beveled, which for most people who are familiar with broad axes, they wouldn't be familiar with that. So this is the French carpenter's axe is double beveled, whereas the Austrian finishing axe is a single bevel. But anyway, the carpenter's axe is one of the crucial tools for doing the joinery. Once you've made your cuts, you then get rid of most of the material with the hatchet, either with the carpenter's hatchet or with the carpenter's axe. Next, when we're doing the mortises, the first thing you do is you've got to drill the holes to lay the mortise out, and that's done with the auger. And because this is a big project with big timbers, it's a big auger, and that's going to be fun to use. Use this several times. A lot of the stuff you'll see around here, I've drilled out the mortises with this. Like, for example, the sawhorses, which you see over there, they were done with that auger. Yeah. Now, once you've done the holes with the auger, the next thing is using this tool. This is, again, look, another one of my favorites. This is a beautiful tool. So I'll show this off on the other camera. So, can you see that, Maureen? Okay. So, this is this one is French. It's called Bisseguil. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that because well, I've read it. I don't know how. I've never heard anyone actually say it. When I've talked to French people, you know, how do I pronounce this word? They've said to me they don't know what I'm talking about because it's not it's not a well-known tool, even in France. They'll also use these in Germany, where in true German fashion, they're basically called what they are. In German, it's a Double Thrust Axt, or a double-ended builder's chisel. Now what it is, and this design again is very, very old. You see these in manuscripts back to the 1300s. Essentially, it's a mortise chisel on one end. If you see that beak, actually I'll give you a close-up. See that? That's a mortise chisel, right? And on the other end, you have a builder's chisel, which in English you'd call that a slick. But because it's so long, you can put your whole body behind the weight. And so if you're cutting out a mortise after you've done the augering, you just lean your body into it and cut out the mortise with the beak. And then when you start to go to cleaning up, you're turning it over and you've got the builder's chisel and the slick. And if you missed a bit with the mortise chisel, then you go back and you do it. Because you've got both chisels in your hand, it's very quick, it's very efficient. Now this one is, look, it's hard to say because these tools, they don't change much over the centuries or decades. But I think this one is, as far as these goes, relatively young, which means probably 150, 200 years. And I'm saying that because of this handle design. Earlier ones have just a simple socket here where you put a wooden handle. These ones started coming in, you know, around 200 years ago. And they really stopped using them. Well, they didn't stop using them, but they stopped using them, stopped making them as we went into the industrial age. But this is a beautiful tool, and it's really fun to use. Very dangerous tool because, like, you know, it's a razor sharp chisel on two ends. What else we got here? This. Okay, this is my Stoss axe, or in German thrust axe, or in the French it's a demi Bisseguil, or half Bisseguil. And so in the French terms, it's half a builder's chisel. I'll get you a close-up of that. Again, it's another beautiful tool. It's got this lovely set of maker's marks here. I think this one's a bit younger, you know, less than 150 years old, but probably more than 100. And beautiful steel, beautifully sharp, and it's just again a fabulous tool. What else haven't I talked about? The draw knife. I got that out because, well, I think we will be using it for shaping some of the timbers for the working parts of the press, but we won't be using it so much for the structural parts. And similarly, when it comes to the plane, we've got planes here. First one is a scrub plane. Now, if you see, it's got a curved profiled blade. We'll be using that to hide one of the areas where I've been cheating, which, if you see here, is the smaller timbers I've milled with the Lucas mill. So I'll be using the scrub plane to take off the saw marks, so you know, can hide the fact that I've been using some machines. Once you've cleaned up with the scrub plane, for the structural timbers we won't be doing anything more than that. But for the deck of the press, where the cheeses will be sitting, and where the press stack will be, we're looking for very finely dressed timbers, and I probably won't have time to do those by hand. But if we do, we've got the jointing plane to joint them up, and if I really get crazy, I've got a combination tongue and groove plane. So that's the plane that do the tongues, and that's the plane to do the grooves, and you just turn it around depending on what you're doing, and you know, you've always got the matching tongue and groove set. Now, I've got a few of these. I'm not sure if I'll be using this one for this job. I've got the different sizes, and I think I've got a bigger one which I'll be using. But anyway, those are pretty much the tools that we'll be using. And there'll be a video on each technique, each step of the way, as much as possible, as we go forward with this project. So, and if there's anyone who's, you know, relatively close to me and wants to come along and join us, then I'm welcome for people to come along as we can organise it. I can teach people how to use these things, and I'd enjoy the company, because, you know, part of the fun of this is going to be sharing it with people. But the real thing is to get the press done, so we're going to have to push ahead to make it happen, because the apples are already being picked, and the main reasons we're doing this is, one, is to get some better pricing for some of the local orchardists who are getting almost nothing for their juicing fruit, or for their fruit that's got blemishes and the only thing they can do with it is sell it for juicing. And there's also a lot of wild fruit around here, and well, around all over Victoria and New South Wales there's lots of wild apple trees growing, and most of that fruit just goes to waste because it's not picked to be eaten, because a lot of those apples aren't really tasty to eat, but they are excellent for cider, absolutely excellent for cider. So if you want to keep in touch with what we're doing, sign up to the YouTube channel so you'll be notified of the videos as they come out. And if you've got any questions about any of the tools that you see here, please feel free to ask. Like I said, part of what I'm doing here is to have fun with my toys, and they're more fun if I'm sharing them with people. And then please like and share, and give us your support. So yeah, stay tuned for the next video, which I haven't decided what it's about. It's probably going to be doing some woodwork, but there's also a video we've got to do on the engineering. There's a video I'm going to do on the design. Lots of stuff that's coming. So talk soon.
And there's a video that needs to be about me.
Oh yes, and Morag wants to do a video about her to include in it. So we're going to have a discussion about that. But anyway, thanks very much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.
And cut.
Cut.
Now can I take a picture of